Welcome to this program on instructional design and online learning. What we will see in this program is that how teachers should be in a position to systematically organize their teaching learning activities, teaching learning resources, including assessment strategies, such that it would have much qualitative impact on effective students' learning. This program is basically for teachers. Students could also engage in this program if they would like to. What we would say in this program is that the teachers are engaged in their teaching learning within the classroom, outside the classroom, in online learning contexts. We will talk about both classroom as well as online learning contexts, how teachers would be organizing their teaching learning activities and design their instruction more systematically and scientifically. At the end of the program, I am sure you would get a fundamentally basic idea that how you will be in a position to organize. Of course, you need to study more in detail for each aspect or concept that will be discussed in this program. What you see on your screen is that what is important is that how students are supposed to organize their own learning. The best way how teaching learning would take place is that the teachers would identify the abilities of each student and facilitate each student to organize that ability by oneself and learn more effectively. Therefore, self-directed learning is most important, whether it is within the classroom or the outside the classroom. The self-directed learning would suggest that the students themselves identify their own abilities within and take care of manipulating, organizing and handling those abilities for their most effective learning in different contexts, different subject areas and different situations and so on and so forth. So, therefore, self-directed learning would mean that the students take responsibility to manage their own self as well as monitor the progress of their own learning. These two abilities, in a way, we also call it self-regulated learning. The students will be able to regulate their own learning in a manner that they can manipulate their abilities and handle content, handle activities, teaching learning activities, and therefore, the assessment strategies. And self-directed learning, decision making needs to take place, that how much interaction should take place. Each individual student is different from the other, and therefore, teachers' responsibility is to provide attention to each individual student's abilities and facilitate the student to organize and handle their own abilities and put to best practice for their qualitative learning. There are different learning theories which contribute to how students learn, how we as teachers should teach. The earliest one is the behaviorism. As you see on your screen, this would simply say that learning takes place, the content information is outside, and therefore, learning is taking place when students are learning from outside the content, the teacher and so on and so forth. And the learning is expressed in change in human behavior, that when a test is given, the student has to respond to. So, basically learning is a process whereby the outside content is imbibed by the students themselves. Learning therefore must be organized in small chunks, and so that the students are in a position to learn faster, and present learning should be sequenced with prior learning and subsequent learning in a chain. So, therefore, smaller chunks, and it must be in a sequence in linkage to the prior learning as well as what learning is coming up. And therefore, as you see on your screen, that what learning devices will be used for behaviorism, for instance, that we must state our learning objectives, break down learning tasks into smaller steps, right or wrong answers for each task. So, therefore, there must be feedback loop, that from time to time the feedback must be provided whether the students are right or wrong, and if it is wrong they have to redo the whole thing, and if it is right they have to proceed. The learner assessment is based on the learning objectives. Learning objectives, as you could visualize, that basically the common procedure or the strategy for deciding learning objectives is the Bloom's taxonomy, the cognitive domain, the psychomotor domain and the affective domain. In another program, this has been discussed in detail, and that will facilitate you how to write learning objectives and organize therefore teaching learning resources and teaching learning strategies as per learning objectives. And finally, prescriptive learning in the learning package. The learning package itself must conform to learning objectives and proceed step by step with smaller chunks, with provision for feedback to the students from time to time. The cognitivism, the second theory which came after behaviorism, the cognitivist would simply say that learning is based on the belief that learning or cognitive mental activity, it is a cognitive or mental activity. Many more things happen within the individual rather than outside, and this cannot be expressed in human behavior everything, because most of the things happen inside the human being, and what happens inside the human mind and human perception is important to learning, and learning involves conceptual understanding, problem solving, procedures, rules. What is important here is, as you see, that human perception is very important, that each individual student perceives the same thing, same teaching of the teacher differently from the others. Even twins do not perceive in the same way. Therefore, what is important is that each individual's ability is important, and each individual's cognitive structure must be addressed while teacher is teaching. Therefore, the learning devices that could be considered for if you are following a cognitivist theory, as you see on your screen, that the statement of learning objectives breaking down into smaller steps, of course, provision of a wide varieties of tasks, because the students would differ in their learning styles, the way they would perceive. Some would like to engage in one kind of activity and others would like to engage in different kind of activities following the same learning objective. So, therefore, there should be varieties of tasks for the students to choose from, and small and meaningful chunk of materials. Use of advanced organizer, this is a very important thing to clarify the structure of learning materials, concepts and sub-concepts. Advanced organizers must be used, and concept mapping is a strategy that would facilitate students that how they would like to proceed. In another program on concept mapping, there is a full program on concept mapping, and you could also visualize that, and we have provided different software that could be used these days to develop your concept mapping of your topic that you are teaching, that would facilitate you to do it better. And in cognitivist theory, that relationship to simple real world context is very important, because whatever one learns, it is in an abstract way, and therefore, one must be in a position to relate to different context, and therefore, what is important is that one must be in a position to apply. So, whatever is taught must be applied in context, and therefore, students learn better. And finally, prescriptive learning in the learning package. So, that should also be there. The constructivist, as you see on your screen, would believe that each individual's ability is different from the other. This is based on the perception and personal interpretation. Learners bring in their own personal meaning into their own learning. Learners construct their own knowledge and understanding. So, each student is in a position to construct his or her own understanding, and therefore, learning takes place within. So, whatever is truth is not, it is not in outside, and truth for an individual would mean that whatever one perceives as truth and constructs within and the beliefs that this is what is truth for me, and the same thing would be different for the other person, the other student, that this is truth for the other person. What is right, what is wrong? There is nothing right, there is nothing wrong, but scientifically certain things must be confirmed by each student, but certainly students are in a position to formulate their own meaning. This is very important, and this meaning must be validated in real life context, and student must engage in real life activities, and the teachers would facilitate each individual student differently from the other students. So, therefore, learning is meaningful only when the learning context and materials are based on the learner's cognitive structure and socio-cultural context. What is important here is that each learner perceives the same situation, same content, same teaching of the teacher very differently, and therefore, one's own cognitive structure and one's own socio-cultural context is very important for one's own learning, and therefore, the teacher must be in a position to facilitate as far as possible that to address the individual student's cognitive structure and the socio-cultural context. As you see that what learning devices could be used for constructivism, that their choice of learning task or the situation by the learner, provision of authentic and real world tasks. There must be authentic tasks. What is important here is the tasks or activities given to the students or assignments given to the students must be very authentic. Use of case studies, provision of collaborative learning tasks, learning through real observation of the context, open-ended learning package and self-evaluation. These last two are very important. The package, the learning resources must be open-ended. There should not be a linear, and it should not be very structured. So, this theory is applicable to situations where learning is supposed to be very unstructured, and students choose their pathways such that they best learn themselves. There is nothing right or wrong in different pathways. The whole idea is that the learning objectives at the end of the day must be achieved, and the students achieve those learning objectives by teachers teaching, by engaging in activities, by self-study and so on and so forth in different ways, but they would reach the same learning objective. This is very important. Friends, what you see on your screen is the distinction between behaviorism and cognitivism, these two very extreme theories, left hand side and right hand side. Behaviorists would like to conform in an abstract way. Their objective is master learning, that every individual student, the traditional saying is that 90% of the students would be able to appreciate or understand 90% of the content. If not, then certainly this must be redone. But what cognitivists would say that one's own experience in learning, what one experiences in learning is more important than the mastery of the content itself. So, therefore, left and right, as you see that behavioristic on the left side and constructivist on the right hand side. But what I am submitting here is that as teachers we need to sift between behaviorism and constructivism and two extremes and be eclectic in designing our learning, and therefore, instructional design from this point of view would like to address both behavioristic and constructivist and in between cognitivist theories and learning situation, learning strategies. So, one could be eclectic in one's own instructional design. So, what you see on your screen is that how teaching learning strategies could be organized. So, basically there are two things which are very important. In the first box, that on the top that you see, that the student learning strategies are very important, and from teacher's point of view the instructional strategies. So, these two should match each other. If the student's strategy is very different from the teacher's strategy, or the teacher's strategy does not address the student's learning styles and learning strategies, there will be a mismatch, and therefore, student learning will not be more effective. And therefore, to the second box that you see, that instructional design is very important, the design of student learning, learner support, learning technology, including of course teaching learning resources and assessment strategies. So, therefore, the last box at the bottom that you see, the curriculum design is very important. What I mentioned here is that it is better that if it is modular, credit based, and life, vocational and social skills are built into the curriculum. What is coming up today is that our teaching learning is leading to finer details of developing competent human beings who could engage successfully in their world of work. But what is lacking today is that they do not possess effective social and life skills to live life effectively as human beings. So, therefore, these two aspects need to be combined in the curriculum. Preferably, there should be blended teaching learning, which could be need based, and authentic tasks and activities need to be built into. They must be authentic, not to talk about activities, but to give activities which are authentic. And therefore, finally, there should be authentic assessment. Authentic assessments would simply mean that the teacher is in a position to provide real life situations for the students to find out whether the concepts that have been learned have been really applied by the students. Do the students know how to apply those in real life situations? That's the crux of the story. That's the test of the pudding. So, if the students simply remember and reproduce, even strategically, intelligently reproduce, that's not sufficient, because that doesn't lead to creativity and innovation. That would simply happen if the students are in a position to apply whatever is learned in real life contexts. So, friends, what you see on the screen, and therefore, as teachers, these three things are very important to us when we talk about instructional design in the digital world today, because technology is part of our life within the classroom, outside the classroom, in face-to-face teaching learning, in online teaching learning. And therefore, the three things that you see on your screen are very important, that the teachers must have significant content knowledge, which they do. They need to have pedagogical knowledge and technological knowledge, meaning this is what is called technological pedagogical content knowledge. This would simply mean that the teachers must know what kind of content has to be taught by what type of pedagogical methods or teaching learning strategies, and to do that, what kind of technological facilitation, technological devices or technological possibilities or instrumentalities would be there, starting from audiovisual aids to the web-based learning. So, whatever technological possibilities are available today, wide range of technological possibilities are there, and therefore, what technological and delivery strategies could better facilitate to use that pedagogy to teach that content. So, therefore, technological pedagogical content knowledge is very important for the teachers. We need to be acquainted with, be aware of, oriented to and develop skills in handling ourselves. Given this, let us proceed to the crux of the story, that how the instruction should be designed. That whatever teaching learning that we need to do, our own paper, our own course, our own chapters and units, modules, whatever, that how to design. What you see on your screen is a very simple model that how your instruction should be designed. These 4 aspects boxes that are given there to give a very simple idea that the instructional objectives must be defined. From the teacher's point of view, they are instructional objectives. From the learner's point of view, they are learning objectives. In either way, you could define them depending on how you would like to visualize your teaching. So, once the instructional objectives are decided, jotted down based on, say for instance, Bloom's taxonomy or any other theory that you are following to design your learning instructional objectives. The instructional procedures, including your teaching learning, learning resources, textbooks, self-study, units and audio, video, etc., media, all need to be designed such that they have to address the instructional or the learning objectives. At the end, finally, the evaluation will be based on, again, instructional objectives or learning objectives. There must be a formative, summative feedback from time to time, which is formative, and feedback at the end of the semester or end of the year or end of the program examination would provide feedback that how the students have done. Once students complete, they go to the world of work, and there could also be feedback from the world of work that how our graduates are doing. This is basically a systematic process to look at how teaching learning, whether you are teaching literature, social science, science and technology, engineering, technology, medicine, whatever, law, whatever you are teaching, and these would facilitate you, and you are in a better position to design the way you best think that it would address most effective teaching learning, so that the students' learning becomes more qualitatively enriched and they learn better than what they would have learned if you would not have followed a very systematic instructional design approach. What you see on your screen, a few models of instructional design. This is a classroom based model that you must be in a position to analyze your learners, what was their past achievements starting from their schooling to the college, what learning characteristics they have, their motivation, their attitude, their interest, their capabilities, and so on and so forth, and the kind of social perception, socio-cultural perception that they bring to themselves to the classroom. Based on that, the analysis of the learners to design or to state the learning objectives, cognitive, psychomotor or affective domain, and these objectives have been discussed in another program, and therefore you could look at that program to see that how learning objectives could be jotted down. Based on the learning objectives, we as teachers, we need to select methods, media and materials. Methods, how to teach; media, what kind of technology could be used to facilitate our teaching; and materials that we as teachers will be using, and the students will also be doing self-study. Based on these, we utilize media and materials. This requires learner participation, engagement of the learners in the process, and finally evaluate, and if possible next time in the next semester revise our. So, this is a simple classroom model of instructional design. Hopefully, you might be doing this, but if you do it more systematically, this would certainly contribute to more effective learning, because this will be more organized and students are in a position to perceive that how you are going to do this. What I would submit here is, before going to the next model, is that it is better that we do a concept map of our own course or the paper, and the box that you have seen as a classroom model. If all these we could fill up and provide to the students before the instruction or the semester starts, it would facilitate the students to organize their learning better. So, secondly, the product based model, that the author validate, analyze, design, develop and produce. So, this is a procedure that for each there are steps also. A systems approach that you see, that you could look at this more systematically later. When you Google this a systems approach, you find out many procedures and diagrams and methodologies that are available to follow systematically how teaching learning should take place. The most important today, which is largely used, is the AD model, a very simple model, but for each step, that A, D, D, I, E, for each step you could study more that how this could be done. Analysis of the environment, learners and learning tasks, design of a plan for further instructional development, development of instructional activities based on analysis of the environment, learners and learning tasks, implementation of the design of the plan, and evaluation of both the performance of the learners and effectiveness of your instructional design itself. You could modify your instructional design next time, so that you would be in a better position to teach better, more effectively for most effective students learning. So, design would involve statement of learning objectives, selection and ordering of content, learning activities, resources, and so on and so forth, and teaching learning strategies. Development, that the design stage is followed by the actual development of learning resources, determination of the models of development, formatting, interaction, interactivity, and activities, and so on and so forth. Implement, to actually whatever you are designing and developing, actually implement in classroom teaching or even in distance learning, in online learning, and so on and so forth. So, here the delivery methodologies would be decided, whether it is a web delivery, online collaboration, whether it is a classroom instructional strategy, and so on and so forth. And finally, evaluation is very important. We do evaluate students' learning, but we do not evaluate our own entire process of instruction, teaching and learning in a semester. It is better that we evaluate ourselves, and not as a compulsory aspect of any regulatory body, but certainly as teachers individually we must evaluate ourselves and improve ourselves. This is a very professional development process which is within the teacher, that there's nothing outside which can dictate that this should be done this way or that way. The teachers, we might be doing this, but what I am simply submitting is that we could do it more systematically. So, therefore, if you shift this whatever we have discussed to online learning context, what would simply involve is 1. The pedagogic design, teaching learning strategies, the learning contracts, the lectures, self-directed learning, collaborative learning, small group work, discussion, project, case study, forum, or scaffolding, mentorship, or facilitating, or counseling, or e-moderating. All these aspects need to be considered more systematically. If you get into content design, what you see on your screen is that we need to develop. I stress that we need to develop a concept map of the course or the module or the paper that we are teaching unit by unit, that would facilitate you as well as students to perceive and to be in the same wavelength, such that your teaching becomes more effective, and students certainly by your teaching more, and therefore they learn more and better than what they could not do without a concept map. There should be content design, there should be hyperlink to open education resources, and there should be activities. What you see on the screen is a very simple model of using mind maps for e-learning, and this you could study more. What I am simply suggesting here is the mind maps are very effective, is an effective tool like a concept map, for instance, to facilitate you that how you organize your entire teaching learning process, including the assessment strategies, assessment of students, and evaluation of your own teaching learning strategy or instructional design. So, what you see on your screen is, what I am suggesting is, it is important that reflection is very important in learning, that we must provide facilities for the students to reflect while learning and reflect after learning, and sometimes reflect before learning. This would contribute and enrich the quality of their learning, and therefore, reflection as a variable, as a strategy, as a process must be brought into teaching learning. There are orientation organizational tools, learning activity tools, interaction collaboration tools, supports tools, analytic tools available for online teaching learning. Reflective online resources for orientation organization tools, a syllabus, the concept map, and so on and so forth. For learning activity tools, there are modules. It could be in HTML, PDF, MP3, and so on and so forth. Open education resources could be brought in. Self-assessment questions, which could be tutor marked or computer marked, which are online. Assignments, different kinds of assignments as an activity. Cases and community projects, action research, reflective journal. This could all be used in an online teaching learning context. The interaction and collaboration tools are very important in online learning. There are plenty, but the selective ones are listed on the screen that you see. So, you could use email, discussion forum, online chatting, participants' own corner, both individual as social, because in a cloud computing environment, what the students would expect is that they have their own individual chunk or individual site which is protected for them, and there is a group site. So, the individual and group sites can interact each other. There are wikis, there are bloggings, there are web-based video conferences, whiteboard. So, what I would submit here is that there are synchronous as well as asynchronous communication strategies for interaction. The supports tools, that is a mentor you will be supporting, technical support, web resources, search engines, online dictionary and thesaurus are available, netiquettes and emoticons are also available, and these days the mobile companies are also considering that how can build in a variety of emoticons and netiquettes into the mobile, and therefore you could use and express better the emotion and thoughts and feelings in a more systematic way. So, this is what is meant by this. Analytical tools would be that module evaluation, teaching evaluation, student satisfaction. We from time to time we must have student satisfaction surveys, process reflection and learning assessment. The process reflection is very important. As teachers we do, what I am simply suggesting is that we could do it more systematically, such that we improve from time to time in the formative process within the semester, of course after the semester, after 1 year, and so on and so forth. The design of the content would involve activities. What you see on the screen is the what different kind of activities. One is question based, the other one is reflective action based. These and reflective action would be more experiential activities, and the left hand side, the question based, will be paper pencil tests. Interaction design, discussion forum, Second Life. You must have seen the film Avatar. The Avatar software is used for Second Life 3D immersive environment. Email, asynchronous, Google Groups could also be used. The types of interaction that there, it is learner technology interaction. This must be facilitated because many learners may not know how to use, how to handle technology the way you have designed your teaching learning process in an online learning. There should be learner contact interaction, learner interaction, and of course learner teacher interaction. What you see finally, friends, on the screen is that these all design issues are grappling with us. We are grappling with all these design issues, that the learning must be authentic, that there must be higher order learning, and there must be sufficient interaction and dialogue. The students must be provided with facilitation of to make their own meaning other than what the teacher is making or describing. There are social technologies and social networks available today, and which must facilitate teaching learning. And connectivism as a theory, and you see another program, connectivism as a theory tells us that how the information needs to be organized, and pathways and needs to be organized by the students themselves, such that they most effectively use the flooding of information today and chaos and shifting spaces of information today. So, what you see on your screen is that these variables grapple us that how we must successfully design. What I would finally conclude the program by simply saying, what you see on your screen, don't look at the left side, that which is more complex, that keep it simple. There is a television advertisement which says keep it simple, stupid, you see. So, and the product sells. And what I am simply saying is that teaching learning is a simple process. Therefore, as teachers we must keep in mind that all our teaching learning we must keep it simple. Starting from statement of learning objectives, developing learning content, your teaching learning process, use of media and technology, engaging in activities, and finally student assessment, formative as well as summative. Let us try to keep it simple. Finally, I would conclude by simply saying that instructional design is a cumbersome and difficult process, and we must study that and use those for very simple learning strategies that we could bring into the classroom to facilitate effective students' learning. I hope this program would facilitate you to do this better. Thank you very much.